Shinji Hirako is quite an interesting character in the world of Bleach. He is the former and current captain of the 5th Division in the Gotei 13. He is leader of the Vizards, and he is one of the most valuable assets that the Soul Society possesses. However, as impressive as Shinji Hirako's resume is, this guy really doesn't have the best track record when it comes to fights. In fact, he has not won a single fight within the entirety of the Bleach series. Now, Shinji has only had a handful amount of fights throughout the entire series, so it'll be easy to go over all of them. The first time Shinji lost was when he was outsmarted by his own lieutenant at the time, that being Aizen Sosuke, and due to him was banished to the world of the living. Later on, he took a minor W against a one-arm, not transformed Grimmjow. However, are we really going to count that as a win considering how nerfed Grimmjow was at the time? I don't think that's fair to Grimmjow. Following that, he lost to Aizen again when he led the Vizards into battle during the Battle of Karakura Town. And then he lost once again during the 1000-Year Blood War arc when he was 1v1ing Bambietta. So you might be thinking, oh, this guy has lost every single fight he has been in. What makes him so special? Why are you even making a video on him right now? Well, what if I told you that Shinji has been nerfed throughout the entire series by the Soul Society? And no, he's not nerfed in the same way that the Soul Society tried to nerf Ichigo by putting restraints on his Ryatsu. Instead, Shinji is nerfed because he is completely forbidden from using his Bankai in battle. Majority of a Soul Reaper's power stems from their Zanpakuto, especially their Bankai. Their Bankai is supposed to be their most powerful ability, their trump card. So imagine if that was ripped away from a Soul Reaper. They wouldn't be able to perform as well as they should be, especially considering that a Bankai provides a 10 times amp to the person using it. So, of course, Shinji would be at an extreme disadvantage against every opponent he has ever faced, because his opponents can go all out. Meanwhile, Shinji has to hold back his most powerful ability. Now, before I dive into what Shinji's Bankai is, it's important to discuss his Shikai, because oftentimes the Bankai is rooted from the Shikai's abilities. So let's go over what Shinji's Shikai first is. Shinji's Shikai is known as Sakanade. It releases a pink gas upon activation and completely reverses the senses of whoever is affected by it, and Shinji labels this as the upside down world. And despite this being a Shikai ability, this ability is already practically impossible to fight against. Up becomes down, down becomes up, left becomes right, right becomes left, forward becomes backwards, and it's not even just the sense of direction which is reversed. Shinji also reverses his opponent's eyesight, the direction of incoming attacks, and where attacks actually land. So imagine fighting somebody when all of this is reversed and you're trying to flip it inside your head. It's impossible to do. Not even the smartest characters like Aizen would be able to battle against this ability, because simply it's just too many factors to think about all at once. Now, this Shikai is very easily one of the most broken Shikais in all of Bleach. I mean, it could very easily pass as a Bankai ability. So you all must be wondering, if this is the Shikai, if the Shikai is this dangerous already on its own, what could the Bankai possibly be? Now, just to put into context how dangerous Shinji's Bankai is, there are only 2 forbidden Bankais in the entire history of the Soul Society. The first forbidden Bankai belonged to the 7th Kenpachi, and the second belongs to Shinji. So I hope that gives all of you a good understanding of how dangerous Shinji's Bankai actually is. Shinji's Bankai is known as Sakashima Yokoshina Happo Fusugari. When translated, it translates to Reversed Evil Aid Treasure Blockade. Upon activation, a flower blossoms around Shinji, once again releasing a pink gas into the air. However, unlike his Shikai, instead of just affecting the senses, all of his opponent's entire perception is now changed. They no longer recognize friend from foe. Once you are affected by this Bankai, everybody becomes your enemy, and everyone who's affected by it just starts endlessly slaughtering each other. We saw this used in the Thousand Year Blood War anime, where Shinji activates his Bankai around hundreds of Quincy's soldiers that all end up slaughtering each other without Shinji having to do a single thing, because they could no longer tell who their friend was and who their enemy was, because to them, everyone was an enemy. However, the first time we actually saw Shinji's Bankai in action was during the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels volume 2, where the hollow known as Ikimigi Domo summons hundreds of hollows to take out Shinji, and Shinji is forced into using his Bankai against all of them. And following the activation of Shinji's Bankai, it is described that the aftermath was just a sea of corpses. Now, I think a lot of you may be understanding now why this Bankai is actually forbidden from use, and that is because if Shinji uses it around his allies, he will have no allies left. So it's really his allies that are holding him back from using his Bankai. If Shinji were fighting alone, he would be a lot more effective, especially when fighting against a large group of people. There's also a common misconception regarding Shinji's Bankai, and that misconception is that it can only be used against weaker opponents. And the reason why people think this is because the 2 times we've seen Shinji activate his Bankai, it was up against weaker opponents. In Thousand Year Blood War, it was against a bunch of Quincy foot soldiers, and then in the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels, it was just up against a bunch of hollows. However, that is not true at all, and in fact, it is quite the opposite, because you see, in Can't Fear Your Own World volume 2, Shunsui is urged to go help Shinji in his fight against the hundreds of hollows. But Shunsui reassures everyone that Shinji needs no help, and he goes on to say, "We wouldn't even be dead weight to him. We would end up swallowed by Sakanade and actually dead. That's all it is." Shunsui at this current time is the head captain of the Gotei 13. He is one of the top tiers in the Bleach universe. There is not many people above him in strength. Yet he himself is admitting that he will be affected by Shinji's Bankai, proving that Shinji's Bankai actually affects the top tiers in the Bleach verse. So does that mean if Shinji was up against everyone all at once, he would just be able to solo them? Well, we learned that there are limits to his Bankai. In volume 3 of Can't Fear Your Own World, Shinji actually states that his Bankai would probably have no effect on the likes of Aizen and Yuha. So despite him being able to affect the top tiers, he can't affect the top tiers in the verse, such as Aizen, Yuha, and most likely Ichigo, because he is also on their level. His second main restraint, and probably his most limiting one too, is the fact that his Bankai is completely useless in a one-on-one scenario. The only time his Bankai is useful is when he's extremely outnumbered. In a one-on-one situation, his Bankai would be completely useless because the ability wouldn't work. His enemy would have no other enemies to attack. Therefore, he would have no reason to use his Bankai. So as broken and as dangerous as Shinji's Bankai actually is, certain conditions need to be met for it to be useful. One is that no allies can be around Shinji when he uses his Bankai. Two is that he needs to be severely outnumbered for his Bankai to be used most effectively. And honestly, these are very limiting circumstances for Shinji, and it's no wonder he can't just be popping out his Bankai in every fight. Either way though, it still remains to be one of the only forbidden Bankais, and it's honestly scary to think about what Shinji would be able to do with his Bankai if he was able to use it with no limits and no regard for the people around him. Anyways, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what other videos you guys want to see in the future. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.